Another day, another flurry of Star Wars activity. My phone's blowing up with a million YouTubers, um, all pointing to this article that apparently Star Wars fans need a break and we need a chance to heal. We need some healing time. Yeah, someone needs something, that's for sure. Wow. I'm not sure, I don't think it's an official report. I think it's just someone making an article, but everyone's jumping on the bandwagon about it. My thoughts are, well, in the article it said something about Legoland is canceling Star Wars Day in 2019, so that's pretty dramatic. I know here in Toronto, all the Star Wars toys are in clearance centers. Walmart has hardly any. You can hardly find Star Wars toys now. Um, the damage has been done by The Last Jedi, and whether you loved it or hated it, it's definitely the backlash is definitely showing with the fans that didn't like it and don't like what Disney's doing have certainly spoken with their wallets. It's very apparent. Now, over here in the peanut gallery, I remember people being super furious at the prequels. We've all talked about that a million times. I've never really talked about it, but I know how I felt. Then I saw that Jar Jar Binks and I lost my mind. And but I didn't hate the prequels at all. I felt there were stories in there. I just hated Jar Jar. But even he kind of grew on me after a while. But what Star Wars fans need is we don't need healing time. There's no such thing as Star Wars fatigue. Speaking as someone who saw the original Star Wars 28 times the first year it came out, and for all you young ones, that's an effort because you have to go and line up at the theater and pay for your ticket every time, right? It wasn't on TV. There was no such thing as video or computers or anything like that, or even recording off a TV or recording anything. If you wanted to see the movie, you physically had to go to the theater and see it. Um, and people did that, and there was no fatigue. So, Solo came out, and maybe the timing was bad on it because there was such a division in the fan base with what happened in The Last Jedi. And so people who hated Last Jedi with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns completely boycotted it. Then there were people like me where I had some issues. I have issues with all movies, like because I studied film theory and film history. I have a degree in this sort of thing, so I know the Star Wars movies are not works of art ever. And the Last Jedi was visually spectacular, and I didn't like the fact that Luke died. And there's some other stuff that got on my nerves, but it's a movie, and they chose Ryan Johnson to make it, and he made it, and I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen next. And it's funny because the other day, all the a whole pile of the people that I watch on YouTube were all freaking out that they just discovered, or sounded like they just discovered, that Ryan Johnson wrote the script before he saw The Force Awakens. But that's been common knowledge for over a year. I think it was common knowledge before The Last Jedi even came out, for that matter. That's why I've always been sort of like, really? I thought it was lazy of him not to watch The Force Awakens and incorporate the storytelling, because he's supposed to be writing the second chapter of three chapters, and it should link up like normal storytelling does, but it doesn't, and that's what upset fans, and that's what upsets anyone who understands anything about storytelling. And yes, there were some interesting choices, and there's some cool moments for sure, for sure, for sure. However, Disney's panicking because they're losing money left, right, and center with Solo tanking, and then they didn't see The Last Jedi multiple times. It's too depressing watching Luke die. You really, I mean, just Disney or Ryan Johnson or whoever's in charge over there, just think for a minute. People waited 40 years or 30 years or however long I waited, because I had waited through all those prequels too to see Luke Skywalker again in a movie. And then in The Force Awakens, we still did not get. I cried. I cried at the end of The Force Awakens. I was so happy to see Luke, and then there's nothing, and I cried. I was traumatized for 2 friggin' years over that ending of The Force Awakens and the fact that he was not in that movie at all. I kept waiting for him to appear. And then I got over it, and okay, it'll all be dealt with in The Last Jedi, and we'll see Luke and we'll see what's going on, and then we know what happened. I wasn't. I personally don't care that he was an old man and all that. That didn't bother me. I just it pissed me off that they killed him. And yeah, now they're definitely going to bring him back. They have to bring him back because people are too upset about him being dead, and they have to bring him back. But then now people will say it's fan service or this and that or whatever, and I'm sure Ryan Johnson will say he never was officially dead, even though he has told us many times he was dead. But the thing is that's upsetting people like me and people who have issues with The Last Jedi, or the fact that they killed Luke before we even really got to see him again after all these years, and we never ever got to see our three people. We were promised when Disney bought the franchise, we were promised a movie with Han, Leia, and Luke together again. And we never got it, and we never will. We never will. They blew their chance in The Force Awakens to have the three heroes on an adventure, then slowly introducing new characters that we could grow to learn to love. But now, it's all. So we don't need a break. We need some competent storytelling to happen. That's what we need. And we also really need, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't. We need Ryan Johnson to apologize. To the people like me that he upset. We went to Star Wars to have fun and to go on a wonderful space adventure. We didn't go to Star Wars to get depressed and suicidal and and to listen to stupid jokes that have nothing to do with anything. We didn't go to Star Wars to see our hero die just because he made a Skype call. We need an apology for that. Just say, "Oh, sorry, I messed up," or "I didn't think it was that big of a deal," or whatever. And then there's other people affiliated with Star Wars that call us man babies, and and I know there's a lot of toxic fans or whatever, saying things directly to Ryan Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams and other people involved in Star Wars. And I know there are jerks that and they're harassing the actors and stuff, so I can understand them getting kind of like they don't want to apologize or acknowledge that that maybe some mistakes were made, maybe because when I went to episode 9, I was upset thinking about how Luke was going to go. When I went to episode 8, I was upset with thinking about how Luke was going to die in episode 9, and I was already pre-depressed for the idea that he was only going to be with us for one movie and then die. But then when he died in episode 8, I'll never get over it, ever, because being a Luke fan since I was 14, that very first time Star Wars was ever played in Canada, I was there, and it's been a love affair for 40 years or whatever, and just to kill him. Anyways, so the problem isn't that there's Star Wars overload or whatever, because Star Wars people will camp out for days to see the same movie over and over again. So if there's new movies, they'll camp out for those too. They'll camp out even more. You could have a new Star Wars movie every week, and the fans would go if they're good movies. And they don't even have to be good, because none of them are good, but they have to be within the archetype of the storytelling structure that we've come to expect from Star Wars. Star Wars, most of us don't consider it an experimental trilogy or franchise. We like Star Wars because we know what to expect. It's good versus evil, it's black versus white, and specific things happen. And yes, I understand, the new way is to subvert everything and all that. I get it. I'm a writer too. But this isn't what Star Wars fans want. when we haven't seen our characters for all these years. Now, if they'd been making a Star Wars movie every year, yeah, then The Last Jedi would have been fine. No one would have freaked out. But it's because we waited so long and were promised, to see our three heroes, and then we were disappointed with that, and then um, you know, anyways. And then now there's other stuff happening. I still think it's hilarious. I just have to touch on for a minute with people how everything went from like when we get totally off topic, but Ray's parentage. I have said from the beginning, Ray knows who her parents are. In The Force Awakens, she knows who they are because she was old enough to know who they are. She would have known their names. She would have known what they looked like. She's a little kid. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember stuff from when I was that age of that little girl in the Vision. She knows who her parents are. So then that's another thing The Last Jedi confused or conflated or whatever, was that suddenly it became about Rey doesn't know who her parents are or who she is, and that's not true. She always knew who she was. We didn't know who she was. Kylo knows who she is for sure, and he knew that from the very beginning in The Force Awakens. So that's another thing what Ryan Johnson should have really like looked at that movie or looked at that script, because we already know she already knows who she is. He knows who she is. Maz knows who she is. A lot of people knew who she was. Even Han Solo might have known who she was because of the way he was talking to her. It felt like he could, this is why I got so excited about that particular mystery, because it could have been his kid, it could have been Luke's kid, it could have been anyone's kid. And it seemed like a few people knew. I felt like Leia knows who she is too. So that's another thing that went off the rails in The Last Jedi, that it suddenly became about Rey not knowing who she was, when in fact she does. So anyways, I think that the Star Wars fans, this whole we need time to heal, no, we need a good movie. We need to hear from Disney or Lucasfilm or someone that they're sorry that some of us don't like it. Some of us, not even that we don't like it, they're sorry that they've kind of mishandled things, and so they're going to retool. I don't think they should have canceled all those movies. I think, because I thought Solo was a good movie, but I understand the boycott. It's too bad they didn't put it out like right now, like, because this is last weekend was the weekend we've had a Star Wars movie for several years in a row. So maybe Solo would have done better because we're used to seeing a Star Wars movie at Christmas time. Maybe it would have done worse because people would have just gotten angrier and angrier. I don't know. But I think that people were looking forward to an Obi-Wan movie. From what I can understand from what I see around the internet. And it seemed like a lot of people were pretty excited for a Boba Fett movie too. So I think that Disney or Lucasfilm or whoever has their finger on the pulse of the fandom needs to listen a little more to some of these YouTube videos, even though they rant and rave. About what the fans really want. Because if you read the hundreds and thousands of comments of these people, they'll tell you what they want. And it seems like we all pretty much want the same thing. It's cohesive storytelling with our heroes. And, you know, these major movies are the Skywalker sagas, and that's just how it is. And then they can make the spin-off ones, so it's not always about the Skywalker saga. But it's too bad that they kind of went about it the way they did. I guess the main problem was the round robin attack they did with not having the trilogy mapped out completely and then hiring the different directors to go with it. It was an interesting experiment, but Star Wars wasn't the franchise for that experiment. So anyways, I'm healing my heart. I hope you are too. Bye for now.